Welcome to this World Satsanga on Saturday the 25th of January 2020, and obviously done in conjunction with Kevin Moore and the Moore Show. And Kevin is very busy at the moment, so it's I've been noted there's a few of the Satsangas haven't been on his YouTube channel, but don't worry, you can always catch up on the Satsangas from my website. If you go to www.beyondthesource.org and then click on the homepage button on the top left hand side, then look down on the right hand side, scroll down till you see World Satsanga, and you'll find an archive there of all the Satsanga recordings from probably the beginning of 2012. So they're all there. You can download them all, and if you have any trouble, you can always email me at info@beyondthesource.org if there's any issues there, and I can always send them to you or find out how to send you a link. Okay, no problem at all. Let's have a look at what's going on this particular month. And first of all, Happy New Year to all. It's a fantastic new year, and we can start to call it the Roaring Twenties, because now we're in 2020, we're in part of the 20s, so it's going to be an interesting set of Roaring Twenties in this particular century rather than the previous century. So let's have a look at the agenda for this time. Okay, so first of all, I've got a talk on how to concentrate on the positive and not on the negative. And then I've got all of the rest of the questions, and there's a lot of questions which you'll need to hoover up from November and December, and including January, so there's lots of questions there. And then we've got a short meditation to allow people to see one's path and go down it without lack of confidence. Okay, so let's get started then on this small talk on how to concentrate on the positive and not on the negative. Well, right now, it is very easy to be negative with everything that's going on around us in the world, whether it's localised to ourselves in our own particular, shall we say, event space or reality, or whether it's going on in the other parts of the world as well. But it's something where if we focus on the negative, we start to, collaborate with others and work together to create a negative environment around ourselves. So everything is bad, nothing is good. Everything's going wrong, nothing's going right, and so we don't actually see the positive things that happen in the world, for instance. So the thing to do is when you look at something, whether somebody's discussing something with you, talking about something, whether you're observing something on the news, when you're interacting with something or an individual within an environment, for instance, just look at it from a different perspective. Just look at how interesting what's going on around you is, how one can benefit from what's going on, how one can learn from what's going on, how one can evolve from what's going on, rather than just seeing it as something we don't particularly want to interact with. Now, when we talk about negative and positive, we talk about good and bad, but if you think of it in terms of there's no such thing as good or bad, there's just experience, then you start to move away from this demarcation of that's bad and that's good. Whereas in real terms, what we're talking about is something that is really, this is what we prefer not to experience or be part of or see or hear or touch or taste, whereas this is what we prefer to experience, see or hear or touch or taste. And that also goes with those we interact with and the environments we interact with them and the circumstances we interact with them as well. So if we can look at it in terms of the experience that's been offered to us and the beauty of that experience in terms of how we're going to grow from that experience, then we start to see it in a completely different light in terms of what the experience is. It's no longer a bad experience, it's just an experience, and the level of evolutionary progression is equal. You don't get more evolutionary progression because you're having a good experience versus a bad experience in our human demarcation. There is just a level of experiential content that comes with that and evolutionary content that comes with it. And sometimes that which we classify as being negative is not so evolutionary progressive, and sometimes that which we consider to be positive has also not so much evolutionary progression. But sometimes we get that which we don't prefer to experience is greatly progressive in terms of our evolution, and the same with positive. And of course, you get the opposite sides as well. So in effect, we can't really judge something as being positive and negative. We have to remove it and just put it down as experience. And the way I do it is I look at it and I take my time to experience something, and that includes how I respond to people at times, because some people want instantaneous responses, and that instantaneous responses at times fuels a certain energetic desire to go down a certain route, because those individuals want to go down that certain route and want to have justification for some mental thought process or other. But if you look at it in terms of what the positive side is, and turn whatever something is as being a desirable experience. I mean, and don't forget, everything is a desirable experience from an evolution perspective, and that goes right down to the very grassroots of everything we experience, from walking down the street, experiencing the birds in the trees, and experiencing walking in the rain, or sweeping the leaves in the rain, for instance. Everything is an experience, and everything, if we look at it in a different way, is a joy to experience. So everything that's happening around us, whether it's a broken leg or an illness or a promotion at work, or winning some money in the lottery, for example, or experiencing a nice time with some friends or relatives or your loved ones, just think of it all as being a good experience. Things are there for a reason. Everything has a reason, and it's the experience and how we interact with that reason that makes us evolve as well. So think of it in terms of those, that there's nothing that is classified as being a poor method of experiencing, learning, and subsequently evolving. And when we start to think in those ways, we don't actually start to focus on things we don't like. We start to realise that it's there for a reason, and we're in that position for a reason. Don't forget, we've steered ourselves together with our guides and helpers to put ourselves in the position where we are in fact experiencing what we're experiencing in the way we're experiencing it, and interacting with that experience and those individuals within that experience in the way that we can do based upon our knowledge at the time, the best way we can at the time. So don't think retrospectively, although learn from retrospective thought processes, so that if you experience a similar thing in another event space, or what humans call a future, then you can better that interaction with that particular event space, and not sort of forgetting the fact that some of these events that we have are also part of a method that we have to eradicate our karmic content, so to speak. Okay, so to concentrate on the positive, if we have to demark something as positive, versus the negative, if we have to demark something as negative, is simply to look at the benefit of what it's giving us, and the beauty in that, what we're experiencing. That's the way to think about it. Another way to think about it is, think of somebody who has a terminal illness. I can remember somebody a long, long time ago saying, I would be happy to be somebody's slave, not to have this illness. But they appreciated that the illness that they got was part of what they were supposed to experience. And that's a really advanced thought process. To be somebody's slave rather than have the illness, whilst also accepting it, was somebody who understood deep down that it was simply something that we're experiencing in a particular vehicle, which allows us to experience a low frequency environment that we call the Earth. Okay, so look at the benefits of everything that's being experienced. Look at it in those terms, and it turns everything into being a wonderful experience, a lifelong wonderful experience. Okay, so even things like missing the bus, missing an aeroplane, being stuck in a traffic jam can be used as a wonderful experience that we can work with and understand and experience our environment and our incarnation in a more robust, efficient, and complete and efficient way. Okay, well, thank you all for listening to that, and thank you for the questions. I've got a lot of questions I need to go through now, so I'm going to go through them and see how far we go. Now, some of these are from people who've given questions from previous satsangas, so they're a continuation of the questions that I got there. So in the transcription you might find some of these start from a different number, like 7 or 8 or 6, for instance, but don't worry about that. It's simply a way of understanding that there being a continuation. I might just remove these, to be honest, so that you've got a better understanding that they are in fact just a series of questions. Okay, so the first question is from JM, a wonderful chap who's in the Western Hemisphere, far Western Hemisphere. And there's a bunch of questions here which we can go through fairly quickly. First question is, Source Entity 4 asks, this is obviously from the Beyond the Source books, by the way. Source Entity 4 asks you, for example, did you know that your appendix has a higher function that is associated with the accumulation and distribution of what your spiritual healers have called course.energy? And I said, no, I had no idea. So the next question is, so are those of us who are missing our appendix missing a function or some important spiritual energies as well? The answer to that is yes and no. In essence, the distribution of energies is a function of the core star is also working with the energy templates associated with it, but the appendix in this instance is a physical function associated with that distribution of energy. And so if the physical function is not there, okay, the energies associated with the gross physical aspect of the human form is diminished, but the energy templates associated with the creation of the gross physical and the spiritual physical aspect of the human form are still in existence. So energetically, the function of the appendix is still there, although physically it's no longer there, and therefore the energetic function of it as well is reduced. But as long as the energy templates haven't been changed to reflect the loss of that appendix, then we're not affected too badly from that perspective. So it's a good question, though, very good question. Okay, next question is again from Source Entity 4. Please note here that I've just been told by your Source Entity, this is Source Entity 1, the first Source Entity I contacted with, our God, if you want to call it that, and therefore called Source Entity 1 when I had to create a label for the others and sort of separate it out, or separate them all out together. So I'll say it again. Please note here that I've just been told by your Source Entity that there are many species that you have not yet catalogued yet, for some of them which exist as semi-physical entities, and others have not yet been created as the permutations available are not anywhere near being used up yet. Have you ever seen or are you aware of any of these semi-physical entities? Is anybody? Are they aware of us? And what are they like? There are. I feel I've seen one or two, but I've classified them as astral entities, to be honest. So I'm not really confident in saying as I actually have seen any of these semi-physical entities that haven't been observed yet, and some of them I'm being told could be at the bacterial level, for example. So there's lots of things that we don't see and don't experience because we haven't got the technology to see. Those things I've seen, as I just said, I've classified as being astral entities. So if I was to ask the question, were they astral entities, I'm just being told they were. So in essence, I've not seen any of these. And to be honest, I don't go around looking to try and find things that are odd or strange. I simply am happy with what I pick up. If one is open all the time, one gets confused with all of the things that are happening from the spiritual levels, and it sort of clouds the reason for being here. And the reason for being here is to interact with the gross physical and those individuals who are interacting with the gross physical. So focusing on some of the other entities, whether they're higher frequency incarnate entities or even lower frequency or even higher frequency disincarnate entities, is something that really I've not got the time to do, to be honest. But they are there, and if I just focus now, the sky is full of things that you wouldn't believe are available. And there's another part to this question. He says, others have not yet created. Others have not yet been created as the permutations available are not anywhere near being used up. So is there a long list of permutations in waiting, so to speak, to be created, to exist on the earth? If there is, who's in charge of the process? Well, basically those entities who look after the earth are in charge of this process. There's obviously a group of entities who are disincarnate, so to speak, but are like certain curators. They work with the curators, and there's a group of entities who are sort of governing the evolutionary efficiency of working with the earth, and how it's going to pan out. So they work with the curators, and when required, they will introduce these new species as they become necessary. And also, some of these new species will only become available to us as we gradually move further up the frequencies. So some of the older species will, in effect, become extinct because there's no longer any need for them, or their particular function is not required. But new ones will be created as they become a higher frequency. So my understanding is, in effect, that these newer species will become available to us when we become a higher frequency incarnate individual. Okay, next question is: your own planet is currently very physical in nature. As a result, it is made up of many low frequency elements, more in fact than any other planet in your universe. So the question is our planet really that unique in the entire universe? If so, it must be an immense privilege to live here. Are the spirits who line up to incarnate on Earth aware of how very special this planet is? It is unique in so much as the plethora of flora and fauna, without doubt, and the other fact is it's been quarantined so that individualised free will doesn't affect the normal functionality of those other incarnate entities that exist within the lower frequencies of this universe, within the multiverse, and stop them from evolving in their particular evolutionary path as well. It's the individualised free will that makes it very unique, but also the Earth is a pan-frequential body, and that means that it exists on all the frequencies associated with the gross physical, the spiritual physical, and the energetic within the physical universe. So that means frequencies 1, 2, 3, 4 right up to 12. It's the only planet that exists on all those frequencies together. Some of the others that are here will wink out of existence, but this is the only one that's truly available on all planets. Now, I might contradict that in a moment when I say that in previous lectures when I talked about the higher up the frequencies you go, you see what's below you, but you can't see what's above you. Well, there are some environments where that is not strictly the case. So although a lot of the universe is, for instance, again pan-frequential, what I'm being told here is a lot of the galaxy that this planet is in isn't pan-frequential. And so, although we'll see more content as we go higher up the frequencies, obviously we can't see above the frequency that we're at, we can see below, there are going to be specific planetary bodies, galactic bodies, etc., that are only available on certain frequencies. That's not because they can't be detected, it's because there are certain demarcation lines that they can be worked with. Okay, that's new knowledge. I'm just started the first few pages of the book on the so I might see if I can get some of those questions answered there. Why is there a bit more to this universe than I've previously thought or previously understood? Okay, and the last question is, and in confirming point 9, which was probably the point 4 I've just done, because obviously I've used some of these questions in previous satsangas. Source Sensitive 4 tells you one of the things that you need to be aware of is that your existence on planet Earth is totally bizarre compared to almost all other entities in your source sensitive environment, including what the other source entities and I have created. Are we really totally bizarre? I thought the human form was common in our universe. I'm being told it's bizarre because of the number of frequencies that are associated with it to make it work properly, and the detail surrounding it. It's one of the most extremely complicated low frequency vehicles that a soul can incarnate into. There are others at the gross physical level, but they're not as complicated, and that's to do with the ability to interact with the environment in the way we do, and with including the ability to have individualized free will. So my understanding there is that it is bizarre because of its complexity. Other body types are much more simple, and even though they exist on the gross physical and allow a very complicated way of experiencing, learning and evolving low frequencies, they are not as complicated as the human form. Okay, For instance, they don't have the same number of chakras. For instance, they don't have the same number of energy templates associated with them. Those sorts of things are the things which demark the human body as being quite... And the variations of the human body, which is all not just on Earth, in other locations within the physical universe, all have the same traits that the human body does here. But it's the other forms of incarnate human vehicle, or incarnate vehicle, that are not so complicated. Brilliant. Well, thank you for those questions, JM. I'm just going to move on to the questions from FN now, and there's about there's quite a few, about 9. So we'll see how we can go through them. And this is some of the questions are based upon the new book, The Curators. So thanks for that. And these look like there's some Kindle references here as well. So the first question is, based upon the work of the Enders, Beginners and Deliverers to remove and relocate events, please explain the Mandela effect. For example, did Nelson Mandela die in one event space and stream, or event stream? Did we all experience a sudden amnesia and then make Nelson Mandela reappeared back into our universe for better progression of humanity? I'm told, and this has happened with a number of others, by the way. In fact, there's another young lady who was depressed, who's now become a bit of an eco warrior. I can't remember her last name, but I'll think of it momentarily. But this is the same sort of thing. Basically, the body of Nelson Mandela has had a walk-in, and the walk-in was at the point after being jailed, and was allowed to sort of contemplate and understand the issues that it found itself in that condition, and then create a different type of personality associated with a more benevolent personality. So the original soul in Nelson Mandela was more of a freedom fighter, so to speak, but in the wrong way, whereas later on the new soul came in and thought of a different way, or a better way, to be able to achieve a similar sort of thing. So there's two ways of achieving the same thing. The one was failing miserably, whereas the other one was going to work because it's based upon a more sympathetic understanding of how to bring peoples back together again. So rather than being a different event space in terms of this, it was all to do with a walk-in, the change of soul. Okay, in the next particular question we got here, in Curator's Kindle number 5441, you referred to mankind colonising other planets close to us, such as the Earth. Could you please elaborate on that? Well, there's a number of individuals who've been on the Earth, a number of, shall we say, civilizations of mankind in its various different frequential conditions that have left the Earth and colonised other planets. I mean, and even colonised right up to the centre of the particular galaxy. So they're further away. They've just continued to do the work. They're not particularly involved with this individualised free will experiment. They are working in a more collective way, whilst also having some form of individualised free will. It's individualised free will, but with a collective consciousness associated with it. And they moved out before the Atlantean Age, and there's a few from the Atlantean Age as well, which also were allowed to leave, but also had their individualised free will limited as well. And they're outside of our detectability, to be honest. They moved a long way away. And some of these, certainly with the Sumerians and even the Mayans, moved out of the frequential range as well. So they're quite some distance away. So local planets, for instance, in our solar system, or even Alpha Centauri, haven't been populated in that respect because they're too close to us. Okay. The young lady I was talking about is Greta Thunberg. If you listen to the news recently, that since she's been doing the sort of eco warrior bit, which is wonderful, a wonderful piece of service to mankind, she's been a very upbeat individual, whereas previously she was suffering from depression. And I picked up this morning when I heard the news about her, and they talked about how she was depressed and very withdrawn and everything else before she started to do this work, and then as soon as she did this work, she became a different person. Or should we say, she became a different person before she did the work, and that enabled her to do the work. And that's because the soul that's in that body called Greta is a walk-in. The body was brought into a certain level of maturity by a different soul, and that soul knew that was all it was doing, and it didn't want to really be here, but that was a part of the work it was doing. And then as soon as it became a certain level of maturity, the soul that's doing the work now moved in and then started to do the work. And that happens quite frequently with certain people. Okay, let's carry on with the rest of these questions. In my conversation with Source Entity One said, once we reach the fourth universe, the 15th frequency, we can choose to have free will with individualized instead of various collectives, consciousness. Please explain this with more detail as possible. Well, it's a natural function of going at the frequencies that once we get to a certain level of understanding and interaction with those other entities of higher frequencies, whether they're incarnate or disincarnate, that will start to work in a more collective consciousness way, rather than individualized consciousness way. So the whole point of individualized free will is for us to experience, learn and evolve what it means to be totally individualized and totally isolated or separated, whilst still being able to work together. But when we start to realize that the whole point of being individualized is just another gateway to becoming more of a collective consciousness, or not just working for ourselves but working for the benefit of others, then we start to work in a collective way. And so what will happen as we become more capable of reaching higher frequencies whilst incarnate, we will seek communion more actively as a result of it, because we want to work with each other on a more profound level for the benefit of each other. So that's what's happening there. Is the fourth universe, the 15th frequency, is actually a disincarnate condition, and so most individuals that level are working in a collective way anyway. To be honest, because they are the higher frequency and they've got more connectivity and more inclusivity and are more collectively conscious as well. Okay. Next question. How universes are associated or categorized with frequencies? In the curator's Kindle page 5540. Or should I say, how are universes associated or categorized with frequencies? Well, basically, in essence, each frequency has the capability of holding a universal environment. This is, of course, correct from the second full dimension upwards to the 12th. Once we get below that, the first full dimension, the frequencies associated with it operate in a completely different way because they're too low. So, there's three subdimensional components in the dimensions from the second dimension up to the 12th, and each of those subdimensional components has the capacity of and does allow the creation of a 12 frequency bands or frequency levels. So there's 36 for each full dimensions. There's 12 for each subdimensional component. But in the first, and subsequently, there are as a universal environment or a capability of a universal environment be supported in each of those frequency bands. But in the first full dimension, the frequencies are so low that the subdimensional components, although they initially split out into three, reconvene back into a composite subdimension, which only allows 12 frequencies. And those 12 frequencies are so low that they're all required together to create a universe. So, in essence, the first 12 frequencies are associated with one universe, and every other frequency above that is a universe in its own right, or has the capability of being created into a universe. Okay. Next question. In the Kindle Curators page 6497, you are discussing magnetism and attractivity. You wrote that you saw where incarnate mankind can change attractivity and magnetism. Please explain how this could happen and describe what you saw. If I do that, I'll invent anti-gravity. Well, what I saw is the ability to change the attractivity of anything. Right now, magnetism or attractivity and repulsion is based upon a metallic function, or plastics with metallic content within it, for instance. But what I saw was the ability to change things that are totally plastic to having attractivity or repulsivity, for instance, and even the possibility of wood doing the same thing, as an example. And it's simply a point of realigning the quantum interactivity of the basic structure of all those different levels of structure below the atom. So it changes in a different way. It's a bit like changing things to go right rather than left, or up rather than down, or left or forwards rather than backwards. And as a result of that, they still have the functionality, but that functionality may be reversed or put on its side, for example. And what I saw is the ability to change the way that the interaction within these various different quanta, these different subatomic levels interact with each other. That gives us the opportunity to create attractivity in something that doesn't naturally have attractivity. And that's what I saw. Next question is, what do you mean when you refer to disappearance of boats and planes? Could you explain if it's in the same principle applies to the Bermuda Triangle or in similar locations on the Earth? Is the disappearances connected to overlap the gap on the frequencies? For instance, this is in Curator Kindle page 6992. Yes, exactly. Disappearance of boats and planes can sometimes be attributed to areas of locally high frequency in a lower frequency baseline location, interacting with an area of locally low frequency in a higher frequency level within the same location or geographical location. And so these things like planes or ships move from one frequential level to another frequential level because there's a frequential overlap, and then they can't get back because they move from one to the other and adopt that frequency level as their frequency of domicile. Now, the only way you can change is if you're interacting with other entities who are capable of manipulating, for example, the frequencies locally around them, and obviously that's quite common because lots of entities use mechanical means or energetic means to move around different frequencies by going from one frequency to another as a shortcut. So the only way that some of these individuals who get trapped in a different higher frequential environments, should they want to leave, that is, what would you want to leave a higher frequential environment, could come back basically is if they interacted with another group of entities, incarnate or otherwise, that would allow them to work with them to create a new condition where they could move from the lower aspect or lower frequency aspect of the higher frequency and interact with another overlap where there's a subsequent higher aspect of a lower frequency environment very close to it or overlapping with it. Okay. Next question 7. What are the limitations of variety of form factors created by the vehicle creator? There are no limitations. Basically, whatever is required for an incarnate vehicle to exist in an environment which is considered to be an evolutionary opportunity, then there can be an incarnate vehicle created. Simple as that. From our perspective, it's only our imagination that limits it, or our experience that limits it. Okay, and that's how that particular question gets answered. There is no limitations. Next one: points of consciousness during meditation has been described as when we reach that blackness, no gravity, complete silence, and love. And one can engage in remote viewing or healing, etc. Could you state the frequency level at where one reaches the point of consciousness during TTF? Yes. So the traversing the frequencies work is you can get to this point at any point within TTF once you've moved out of the gross physical and the spiritual physical. So that would be when you move above the 12th frequency, basically, because when you're above the 12th frequency, you're outside of the energies associated with the creation of the incarnate human vehicle. And then you've moved from above the 12th, you're in the 13th frequency, you're in the second full dimension. So you start to move into those different levels of consciousness and connectivity then. Although moving just simply into the 4th frequency helps in terms of one's increased level of of connective functionality. But the higher up the frequencies you go, and the more that you disassociate yourself from the gross physical or the physical universe, the more enhanced that level of connectivity and clairsentience, if you want to call it that, comes into it as well. Okay, number 9. Could you elaborate about the gaps between frequencies and overlaps between frequencies during traversing a frequency? In your book, are you saying that we are seeing past, present and future in connection to travelling in the frequencies? Are the Akashic records accessible in the gaps between frequencies? Could we see the events of past, present and future when we travel through time gaps because events are still happening? I'm not using the word time, since events are not contained in a time capsules. Kindly clarify. Well, basically the gaps in between the frequencies are a function of substructure, which are it's part of the structure of the source, which is above and beyond that, which is the basic structure of the source, which is obviously from the origin. So the substructure within everything, really. And that substructure is what is used for the curators to move around the sort of standard, or should we say the dominant structure of that, which is part of the source that's been used or isolated to create the multiversal environment. So these aren't where the Akashic records are. The Akashic records is simply a set of memory function of the source that is specifically focusing on the interactions of incarnate mankind and other human type vehicles. Others have a different record, so to speak. So think of it in terms of each species of incarnate vehicle has its own memory set, that is where everything that's experienced, learned and evolved by every soul in every body that they've ever been in is recorded in a particular location within the source. And that is not in these gaps within the frequency. That's a higher function of source that is outside of the multiverse, but nevertheless accessible. And if you have the key, or should we say the methodology of doing it. The only way to see the events of past, present, and future is because we are moving into different event spaces. And if you can go into an event space where everything is happening concurrently, i.e. you access all event spaces concurrently, then you can choose to see everything concurrently, which in my experience creates a white wall, at the white screen, because everything's happening too quickly and you can't experience everything concurrently whilst in this particular incarnate state. We simply don't have the capacity until we're disincarnate. Or you can simply isolate an event that is classified as being future from our perspective. Don't forget there is no thing as past, present and future. There's only sort of now, and that nowness can be experienced concurrently with every other nowness. And so what happens is we've got this capability of isolating an event space from another, should we decide to do so, should we interact with event space in a shall we say a robust and repeatable and knowledgeable way. There's a bunch of good questions there, thank you very much. And we're not quite on the last page yet, but we're not too far away from it. We've now got WP, who sent in a group of questions, and thank you very much, from certainly before Christmas, so I'm very happy with this. There's a whole bunch of these things. In fact, there was two emails that were sent that resulted in what's effectively about 8 questions here, I think, looking at this. So we'll go through them one by one, and then there's another couple of questions from another person, another wonderful person called KS over in Bangkok in Thailand, which is fantastic. So let's go for the first question then. I think these are quite straightforward. Are the curators robot-like, or are they individually sentient energy, each unique creation with its different characteristics, tendencies, capabilities, etc.? If the latter, how do they relate to one another? Hopefully not like present-day humans. No, the curators aren't robot-like. The curators are disincarnate entities who are simply operating on a different level. They operate in service to those who have chosen to interact and move into the evolutionary cycle to help the source accelerate its own evolutionary progression as fast as possible. So they consider them as being similar to energetic selves to ours, but they just simply haven't decided to enter into the evolutionary cycle through incarnate methodology. That's the way to think of them. And their sole purpose in life is, or existence, I should say, is to make sure that the multiverse is maintained in its evolutionary most efficient condition. Okay. So the next question is, that question caused me to wonder again, are all TESs unique creations with different characteristics, tendencies, capabilities, etc.? And if so, what gives the rise to these differences? There's a related question, is the test that created Jesus more evolved than others, or was it just that the aspect Jesus had 6% of sentient energy versus 5% or less more than other aspects? Is the TS that created Hitler less evolved than others, or was it just that the aspect Hitler had was less than 5%, or was in an aberration? Well, first question is, the true energetic selves are individualized units of sentience and energy, separated out from source, and they gain their own characteristics and tendencies based upon what they've achieved, what they've experienced through their own work and through the individualization of smaller units of sentience and energy from themselves, what we call aspects, in brackets souls, or shards, in brackets subsouls. And so they create their own personality, their own sort of energetic signature based upon the evolutionary content and experience associated with what they've done. The thing about Christ and Antichrists, for example, Jesus and Hitler, is that they're not specifically more or less evolved. I mean, the Jesus aspect, TS, is in a higher dimension than where we are right now. But I've seen other individuals who are from the higher frequencies within higher dimensions. And so it's just that particular TS has decided to work in a different way with us to try to make us move in a different direction and evolve in a different way. And that's the same with the Hitler or the Antichrists. In fact, you could argue, and one of the things I'm picking up is that these so-called Antichrists are generally more evolved than those who are the good guys, so to speak, because they take on board a lot of negativity and focus from other incarnate entities as well. So they take a lot of energy from them. They receive a lot of negative energy from them because they are doing things a different way. So they have to be more highly evolved to take on board that level of negativity from other incarnate entities than those who would have been on the good side, so to speak. Okay, but there'll be a whole book on this later. There'll be a whole book on this later, which will describe all the different things, all these different, shall we say, Christs and Antichrists, or like the Buddha and like Hitler and like Genghis Khan and like Idi Amin and all those sort of people, and also Mother Teresa, all these different things that they've got a reason for them, and so there's going to be a book that's puts me in a position to be able to communicate with these particular entities and get more in-depth information as to what they were doing and why they were doing it. Right, next question. While reading the curators, I'm amazed at the intricacy and depth of organisation and activities behind required to maintain and evolve the multiverse. It is another reminder of the supreme intelligence behind all creation, which is breathtaking. So while you can communicate with the source entity as if it was another wise person, the majesty of the source entity remains incomprehensible. Given SE's majesty, this again caused me to wonder how and why our source entity is able to set into motion the evolutionary cycle that results in low frequency environment, trapping entities in karmic cycle that results in a completely dysfunctional human race, at least up to now. It seems as if the source entity has this dysfunction within itself and that needs to be worked out on this plane. Well, there's more to this, by the way, but I'm just going to just quickly go into that. Everything has to be experienced. And in general, there is a little bit of an unwritten observational rule that suggests that the harder we experience something, or the more difficult it is to experience, the greater the evolutionary gain. And therefore, that which we put ourselves into, to be able to experience, learn and evolve, and pass that evolution on whilst not losing it to our creator, is done in such a way that we can be most efficient. So if you're experiencing hardship, you're evolving faster than what you would do if you're experiencing pure joy. I mean, pure joy is fantastic, but pure joy is only a slight step away from what we are when we're in the energetic. So to experience hardship and difficulty really does catapult us evolutionary. So this is why this is all allowed. And it's also balance as well, don't forget. And the physical universe is all about balance or duality. Another way to ask this is, why didn't source entity start with frequency 13 and avoid the perpetual human misery with entities floundering around looking for meaning? I sometimes ask source entity, is this the best you can do? Or is humanity only a subset of those lost souls, so to speak, of all entities, most of which never fell into the karmic trap? Help. Yeah, I mean, basically it's to do with us making the decision to experience things and allow things to change in a way which create the potential to experience things in different ways, or to create the condition where we recognise that we've gone the wrong way. And we have gone the wrong way. There's no doubt about that. There's a worldwide wrongness about what we're doing, but the potential for change later and the subsequent evolutionary progression is amazingly high. So it's a little bit like, to allow the pendulum to swing up, it must swing down, and that's the way to do it. And Newton said, what goes up must come down, but also what goes down must come up. That's the way to think about it. Next question: at what frequency or universe do aspects return to in the energetic? Same as where the test resides. Where do the tests reside? Well, the true energetic selves our true energetic selves reside in a frequency within the multiversal environment that is relevant to its overall evolutionary level. There are aspects of souls who get stuck here because they want to stay associated with the earth, and they would hang around the spiritual and physical levels of the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th frequency. And we classify them sometimes, if they're observed, as ghosts or other things, or poltergeist. But generally, when an aspect, if it's not attached to the earth, it will go back to an area, a geographical area that's sort of close to the TES. It'll definitely go back to the frequency that the TES is domicile on, although depending upon what's going on with the aspect and whether it wants to stay or it needs to stay in a projected state, it will stay in that frequency associated with the TES, but not enter into one of the levels of communion associated with reconverging the sentience and the energies back in with the TES. Okay, so for instance, most people on Earth are around the high end of the 4th full dimension, so that's where a lot of them are here. Okay, that'll be, say, for instance, the 8th frequency of the 3rd subdimensional component of the 4th full dimension, although there are those in the 3rd full dimension and those in the 5th full dimension, but not many. Most people are in the 4th full dimension, or the lower end of the 4th stroke upper end of the 3rd. Next question: as an aspect accrues karma, does the aspect keep incarnating until free of karma, or does it re-emerge with its test, who in turn accrues the karma, who then needs to create another aspect to release the karma? Generally, the karma is associated with the aspect, and that level of addiction to being here, to have material wealth, good health, good partnerships, sensory excitement, all those sorts of different things, needs to be worked off by that particular aspect. It's all about being in the physical but not being of the physical. Once you can come in here and not be affected by things in a profound way, i.e. you can go into an environment that would normally affect you, but it doesn't affect you. That means you're in the physical but not of the physical. Then you've almost moved beyond the need to be here, because you've removed the karmic state of attractivity or addictivity to low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions and sensations. So generally, although there are ways of isolating karma associated with an aspect to allow the aspect to enter into a form of communion with the TES, when that aspect is then reprojected out into another physical environment to experience, learn and evolve, that karmic aspect, the karmic content will be reassigned, so to speak, to that particular aspect as well. Okay, so there's ways in which it's reassigned, and sometimes it stays with them if they stay in a projected state. Next question: what is it about the energetic that is so unsatisfying that a karmic affected aspect or TES is compelled to return to the incarnate state? Why not just remove it why not just move on and continue to evolve within the energetic? Is it because there is no choice in the matter? Can we only shed addiction to earth whilst on the earth? No, anything to do with the physical universe creates a karmic level of karmic interaction if we're not careful. So all the frequencies within the physical universe are in some way able to give us some level of attractivity to these low frequency environments and thoughts, behaviours and actions. Obviously, the higher up the frequencies we are within the physical universe, the less addicted we're likely to be to being here. But the whole point of being here is to work with the potential to be addicted, never be addicted, work with addiction, get understand it, and then go energetic cold turkey, so to speak, or karmic cold turkey. So the whole point of it is to experience it, work with it, either be divorced from it straight away or work on how to divorce oneself. And that this working on how to divorce oneself from the karmic content of the physical is another way in which we accelerate our evolutionary growth. So it's all about experiencing, learning, and evolving, and then turning that experiencing, learning into supreme evolving through being in the gross physical. Next question: do all entities, aspects, or tests in the evolutionary cycle choose to incarnate? Are required to incarnate? Why did they incarnate in the first place, only to find out that it was a trap from which to escape? Can they simply decide to remain in the energetic and avoid accruing incarnate related karma, or does that nullify the opportunity to evolve? Certain TSs do, in their way of evolving, choose not to project parts of themselves into the gross physical aspect of the multiverse. But they evolve at a different speed, a different level, in a different way. So it's not a compulsory item that we need to incarnate to accelerate our evolution. There's many other ways of doing it, and obviously the Earth is an extreme way of accelerating our evolution. But it's not a prerequisite requirement. It's not a condition of existence that we go and incarnate on the Earth. There are myriad, countless billions of aspects and TSs from those aspects who haven't even worked on becoming associated with the Earth, for instance. Some of them have gone into the physical universe, the higher frequencies, and done it that way. And there are those who do it slowly by just staying in the energetic. The plethora of different ways of experiencing the multiverse is what creates a holistic understanding of the multiverse, and therefore holistic understanding of that area of the source's sentience that it is occupying within the origin, and therefore this is the plethora of ways in which the origin understands itself as well. So it's a good question. That's the answer. Last question from WP: if every sentient being is created by our source entity directly or indirectly, would it create those in the evolution cycle with a propensity to foul their respective environments, physically and psychically, and then in the same time necessitate the creation of curators, in brackets 12 to the power of 12 per evolutionary cycle entity, to clean up the mess? Is it to enable free will within the evolutionary cycle? I'll need to reread this just to make sure. There's no desire for the source to create an entity that is particularly hell-bent on, so to speak, making a mess of things. It's a very advanced soul that decides to go into a difficult way of incarnating or experiencing interaction with the environment and move out of it. They choose a very difficult task, and so in reality, the souls that choose the difficult existences are the ones that are usually the ones that evolve faster, and the ones that are highly evolved. And also those who choose to be of service in some way, so to speak, are also highly evolved. But it's all to do with needing to experience every potential aspect of what is available to experience in the most profound detail possible. And so the objective of being in a position where you make a mess of it and then recover from that mess, and that mess might be recoverable in 2 or 3 lives' time, is one way of experiencing it and evolving from it, and doing that which other souls would shy away from. So some of these souls are really, really brave souls. Okay, last two questions are from KS in Thailand. Fantastic. So, people who believe in karma tend to believe that karma is linear, with all beings reincarnating always from the past to the present to the future. However, I've been feeling this isn't right. I think the linearity is based on the concept of linear time created by humans. Maybe karma is in fact cyclic. Beings from the future can reincarnate in the past and vice versa. I'm not sure if this is correct. What's your opinion on this? Yes. The linearity of moving from one point to another point is simply a human condition. Other incarnate entities of higher frequencies understand that this is an incorrect observation. Mankind is the only incarnate entity that's managed to create a metric for something which doesn't actually exist. And when we start to understand this, then we'll progress faster from a scientific perspective. Karma is something we experience, and we can experience the removal of karma before we've created that karma, if that makes any sense, because everything is, I wouldn't say cyclic, it's more spherical, and it occupying the same space concurrently, in the same event space and the same reality space, so to speak. So everything exists concurrently. So there is no past, present, or future, there's just now. And that nowness can mean that if you wanted to focus on it, you can experience something that you've not created the conditions to experience, and you can create the fruits of that experience without going through the process associated with the creation of those experiences. So everything is spherical. And also you can experience the hardship and the work to create the end product without actually experiencing the end product, because you wanted to experience that which creates the end product, not the actual end product itself. So that's another way of thinking about it. So I would classify it as being a spherical, or spherically holographic is another way of saying it. Which is, it's difficult to explain what I see, but basically everything is there now. Okay, so again, one can experience a karmic experience without also experiencing the events, so to speak, that create the karmic experience, because that's already been experienced, or isn't needed to be experienced as well. Something else to think about. Okay, let's have a look at this question here. Well, so this is a request. This is, I'd love to see you, if possible, publish a book dedicated to the explanation of the concept of thought form, if it does exist and if it interests you. Yes, thought form does exist, and we create lots of thought forms. That's quite obvious. It is now, but not too many people, mind you. There aren't many books. This gentleman says there aren't many books these days that talk about thought forms in details. One was written by Besant and Ledbetter. Besant and Ledbetter were Western yogis, and they were really advanced yogis. Unfortunately, they were derided by certain individuals who were trying to knock down the work they were doing by accusing them of certain things. But that's not for me to broadcast. Some of the pioneers for this concept, Besant and Ledbetter, isn't detailed enough. So even Besant and Ledbetter's book isn't detailed, because he's saying that the book is so thin. The reason why I'd like to have a greater understanding of thought form is I find that nowadays some people worship what they claim to be gods and goddesses. The problem is some of these entities come from literature or fiction. The Hindus in India, for instance, for example, worship Hanuman in Ramayana. In Thailand, some people worship Sun Wukong from The Journey to the West, or even Natasha from The Avengers. What? I can understand that comment. There are some people here claiming they're mediums for these entities, so or should we say emissaries for these entities. So what I want to know is if these are mere thought forms, and what thought forms really are. How do they work, and whether they're safe or dangerous? Is it possible that some ghosts or spirits are not real ghosts or spirits, but are only thought entities created and given life by a collective consciousness? Some ghosts are astral entities that we create. Yes, that's definite. I might deal with thought forms in one of the books, either this book that I'm working on now, or the book that's going to be called Beyond the Origin. So I'll have to make a note of this somewhere, definitely, to make sure that I remember, so to speak, to go over the content. But generally, some of these things, some of the Hindu gods are basically, they're used as a focus, really, for meditative focus. And that level of meditative focus is misunderstood now, so that the whole point of them being used as a meditative focus has been lost, and they're now being revered as real sort of gods or thought forms or things that control our existence, which is not correct. What I would say is, if you see anything that has human form, I mean even the Hindu gods, you see them. There's lots of them. Some of them are benevolent. A lot of them are angry and aggressive. A lot of them are imagery that have been remembered and broadcast down through the ages from those survivors from Atlantis as well. Those entities that have animal bodies. Egypt has this as well, and also the blue skin. These, or even purple skin. These are individuals who survived the Atlantean downfall and have been recorded in history as being giants or gods or messiahs or people of immense power. So a lot of these things are literally putting individuals who are probably quite just wealthy individuals on a pedestal because they were able to do things or had an appearance that was not normal or not considered to be something that could be achieved anymore, and therefore they were gods or of higher power. Okay, so I will look at the thought form part if not in this book, in one of the other books. So don't worry, I won't forget it. I've made a note of it here, and I'll put it in the notes with the next book, so at least it gets passed on. Okay, that's the end of this Satsanga. What we need to do now is the meditation, which is going to be quite a nice meditation for us all to work with. Let's have a look. Meditation to see one's path and go down it without lack of confidence. So let's start this meditation by simply sitting with our back straight in a straight-backed chair. Palms uppermost on our upper thighs with our eyes closed and gently focused on the location of the origin of the third eye, which is in between the eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And I want you to just sink into all of the events and the experiences that you've had to date that have got you to where you are to date. Just look at all of the things that have happened that have put you where you are now, and that you've accepted some of these things that have happened. Some of them have come from nowhere, some of them have been planned. Just observe retrospectively everything that's happened to you from, let's say, you can go from birth if you want to, but I would say the most influential time is from the age of 7. See how you've been governed by your parents' interaction, your friends' interaction, your teachers' interaction, your work colleagues' interaction, your friends' interaction with you. Look at the decisions you've made that have given you this particular reality that you're in now. If you've enjoyed fame and fortune or notoriety, I don't think I can say that word properly, notoriety, see of the different things that have happened to you to create that condition. If you've experienced hardship, continued hardship, look at the decisions you've made that have continued to create that hardship. You're a very brave soul, that you're going to experience significant evolutionary progression as a result of it. But if you wish, look at the way you've responded at certain junctures in your existence. What decisions have you made? Which ones have you always made that have given you this hardship? If you've experienced joy or financial success or shall we say fame or visibility, or popularity, or celebrity, look at the things that have happened to you to get you there. Look at the choices that have come towards you, how you've made those choices, what decisions you've made. From this you can see retrospectively the path that you've taken and how you've chosen to take this path in terms of the twists and the turns, the decisions, the indecisions, what you classify as being mistakes, but maybe aren't, what you're classifying as being a good decision, but maybe isn't. See how it's given you a certain pathway that's led you to where you are now. Now look forwards and see how, if you followed the same methodology of experiencing that which is around you, interacting with those that are around you within that environment, and how you've dealt with certain things that have been presented to you, sometimes you've seen them coming, sometimes they've come from a different angle, you've not seen them coming. Just see how that which you've experienced can be used as a way to guide your path, or know that the path you are taking is the right path. If you continue to work in the way that you've worked to date, with all the different interactions, experiences, and environments that you're going to be presented with, you have been presented with already, then you will follow the same path. Whether it's celebrity, fame, wealth, or hardship, you will follow the same path. If that's the path that you're happy with, and you know in your heart of hearts you have to go down, because you need to use your intuition to understand that what you're experiencing is not for you, it's for the source, it's for your true energetic self and then the source, and that the evolutionary content being associated with what you're experiencing is in most cases a significant improvement on what you would have what you would have accrued if you'd chosen to go a different route, an easier route for instance. Then continue to get down the route you're in. If with this knowledge of understanding how you've interacted with certain junctures, certain individuals, certain environments, certain conditions, and you want to change that direction, then simply choose the opposite response when you're given similar or same opportunities, interactions with individuals and their environment, and the circumstances surrounding those individuals within their environment or your environment. You can choose to change your path. If you're not changing your life plan, you're just choosing the way that you achieve your life plan. Remember, a life plan is a series of goals. This is what you've chosen to experience in this particular incarnation. If your free will is how you get to the point of experiencing and interacting with these particular goals and those individuals within the interaction of the environment and the circumstance that achieve those goals. So you can change the way you achieve that by moving forwards and understanding how you responded in previous parts of your incarnation, and react in a more efficient way. Or you can simply adopt to react in the way that you've always reacted and continue to get down that path. Or you can change the path by choosing a different way to react, which will change the path but it won't change the experience at the end. Although it may change it in another way. So it might be intense in a different way, or it might be joyful in a different way. At this juncture in your incarnation, you have all of the tools that you've accrued by retrospectively observing your life and all the different junctures that have been presented to you, the different decision points, choice points, okay, and how you've moved into those choice points and moved out the other side. All of these are your tools now to enable you to go down the rest of your path in this incarnation in either the same way or a changed way. But whichever you do, you know that the path you're going to take is either the one that you're happy with taking by adopting the same way of interacting with that path and those others within the path, or you can change it to a different way of doing it, but still going down the same path. You're not rejecting the path, you're changing the path. So in this way, you're interacting with it properly in a mindful way, in a meaningful way, rather than a blind, simply responsive way. You're working with it in an interactive way. Use the previous experience you've had. Use all those interactions and the products of those interactions as your tools to enable you to interact with that direction you're going into in either the same way, but a more efficient version of the same way, by knowing what's going to happen because you've already experienced it previously. When you interact with similar or same circumstances, with similar or same individuals, in similar or same environments, or you can change the way that you interact with them and experience another type of way of experiencing the same path, which you may consider to be more or less desirable. Irrespective of what you do, by using these tools, you know that you're able to steer yourself down the path in a knowledgeable, conscious, mindful way, not just a blind way. Just take a moment to meditate on this and see the beauty in what you've achieved and see the beauty in what you're going to achieve. You may already know what you're going to have to interact with, so choose a different way. Or accept the same way. So it's a very short meditation, very short level of understanding. I'm sure you can do it and spend twice as long or 3 times as long investigating what you've done in the past and the way in which you can interact with that which you know is going to be presented to you in the future. Slowly come back into the room. Slowly open your eyes, take a drink of water or another beverage, which isn't alcoholic, of course. And I thank you very much for listening to this first Satsanga of 2020. We're in the roaring 20s now, although I don't think it'll be as crazy as the 1920s. Thank you for listening to it. Thank you for broadcasting it to others if you pass it on to others. It's always useful to do that. And I look forward to working with you again in February's Satsanga. So, namaste to you all, and God's love to you all. Did you see the aliens in Crete?